Okay, hello everyone. My name is Jenny Chen. So today we have a very special event because typically we have a technological topic in healthcare 3D printing and bioprinting and regenerative medicine. We talk about technology and its application, but today we really have somewhat of a festival of all the topics in the past because now we're into the startup space, the commercialization phase of the technologies we talked about all year long last year. So today we have a very quick and brief agenda. The first hour, we're gonna sit down with some investors in the space and talk about the investment landscape for startups. And second hour, we have some expertise in various spaces that early stage startups would need to successfully run their companies. And then the third hour is we have about 8 or 9 startups. I kind of lost count. We'll have a rapid pitch, and then you can see what kind of universe we are in and who are the founders and what they're doing at the moment. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our investor panel. So the investors on the screen, first is Peter Marcellus, and the second one is Jesse Cortia. I hope I pronounced that last name right. He's laughing. I don't think I am. Courtier? You're muted, Jesse. We have Nicole also supposed to be, okay, Nicole is here. Let's move her to the webinar because this is new interface here. And Nicole, let's see. Okay, there you go. Takes a little bit seconds of delay here. Okay, please unmute yourself. There you go. Welcome, welcome. And Nicole, she was an entrepreneur and scientist in her past life, but now she's moving on to the investor side of things, running an accelerator with MedTech innovators, with one of the biggest accelerators that I know for MedTech. So I would like to, ask you guys to introduce yourself, what you are focusing on right now, and how you come to this point. So Peter, I'll start with you.
Okay. Well, first of all, Jenny, thank you for the invitation. And good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining this webinar. So my background is actually in engineering. I am an engineer by education, and a bit by accident, I ended in the field of 3D printing because originally I studied in robotics and automation. Started a PhD in the topic of automation of 3D printing technology, but very quickly I started, let's say, shifting my work towards process control in what we called at that time selective laser melting technology. Today we call it laser powder bed fusion, which is actually the 3D printing of metal powders through laser radiation. And I was the kind of engineer always that could not really decide what to do, become an engineer or a surgeon. I was interested in both domains. So pretty quickly after my PhD, that was in 2004, I started a startup company in Belgium called Layerwise. And that was actually one of the pioneers in 3D printing of medical devices. So we were one of the first to use laser powder bed fusion technology to manufacture all kinds of medical devices, ranging from simple dental prosthetic devices, but to class 3 medical devices like components for heart pumps, for spinal devices and orthopedics. And that company grew quite fast and became one of the market leaders in let's say, medical device 3D printing. It was acquired about 6 years after the start by 3D Systems. And I worked another 4 years at 3D Systems then in the corporate division to help 3D Systems build, let's say, a portfolio of let's say, medical activities. There was a strong focus on patient-specific implants in 3D Systems, also with the acquisition of medical modeling from Andy Christensen, which was in the same organization. In Belgium, we have always focused more on, let's say, volume manufacturing of medical devices, so larger scale production. and that was fun. But as an entrepreneur, I started missing, let's say, the entrepreneurial aspects of a startup. And I decided after 4 years at 3D Systems to start my own activities again. And since then, I've been working as an advisor and investor to medical startups, 3D printing startups. Most of the investments I've done so far have either a link to 3D printing technology or to medical device technology, and ideally both. Today, I am an investor in 4 medical device companies using 3D printing technology. The first is Abnovis, which is my contract manufacturing company. So we do
we
a
know
lot
them
of
really well.
yeah, I think they presented
I
also
love Ruben.
on
Yes.
on 3D Hills. So Ruben is running that company indeed.
Yeah.
Second is Replasia, which I will also pitch later in the startup session. It's a company focused on hip preservation technology. So we manufacture a new patient-specific implant for hip dysplasia patients, and we develop software for 3D analysis of the hip joint. And then there's 2 other that are a bit outside of orthopedics. One is the company Onicor in the Netherlands that develops a new patient-specific drug delivery device for treatment of nail fungus, so onychomycosis. And the 4th company is more in the bioprinting and tissue engineering domain. That's the company Antleron in Belgium.
Yes. Yeah.
So they develop, let's say, 3D closed-loop bioreactor technology, supporting cell and gene therapies, exosome production, and well, that's basically it for me today.
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
and you're extremely hands-on. I know that, and that's a lot of companies to help and invest in. Okay, let's go to the next speaker, Jesse. You want to introduce yourself, where you are, because you have a fascinating background and journey as well.
Yes. So yeah, I'm Jesse Cordier. I'm a pediatric radiologist, and I founded a startup along with my co-founder Rick Bierberman in the augmented reality space, using it for pre-surgical planning, education, and training. And Sierra Medical, we took that from an idea through various accelerators, through our Innovation Ventures program, and into now an FDA 510(k) cleared product. I also do advisory work for accelerators such as the Kids X Accelerator, adding insight from a pediatric and radiology perspective, as well as our UCSF Innovation Ventures program, and the Avon River Ventures, which is more of a later stage Series C and post advisory work from the healthcare side of that thing. So have been really starting things from just working from just an idea and being able to take that from moving it through the process of MVP, taking that now into something where we worked on clinical trials. And so, definitely happy to share insights through our journey going through there and into the FDA 510(k) process, which is, somewhat challenging, but also I think we really learned a lot along the way in getting that done. Particularly, looking at some of the things that I've been working on as far as advisory work on very early stage things from the idea stage, medical device and diagnostics at UCSF. And then through the Kids X Accelerator, a little bit further along, investment in some of the things like diagnostics and wearables, because I think there's really a lot of interesting trends for 2025 coming up for the investment side of things. So yeah,
we should definitely talk about that, the trends for sure. Yeah, thank you so much, Jesse. And Nicole Black, we met each other maybe 2 years ago, I would believe, Nicole. And at that time, you were in desktop health at the time, and then you were a scientist 100%, and now you made a switch. So love to hear what you're doing now.
Yeah, thanks, Jenny, and thank you for having me in this exciting event. So I've had a very interesting career path the past few years in particular. So I did my PhD in Jennifer Lewis's lab at Harvard in the Wyss Institute. So those of you that have been in the more academic side of things probably know Jennifer. She's amazing in all fields of 3D printing, but in particular bioprinting is really where her work is pushing moving the nozzle, as I like to say. And so after my PhD there, I was working on novel polymers for biodegradable tissue grafts, specifically collaborating with Mass Eye and Ear Hospital in Boston to create a regenerative tissue graft for repairing eardrum perforations, which we called the phonograph device. And we're looking into using this material for other platform indications. We spun out a spin-out company called Beacon Bio from Harvard, and then I actually underwent an early stage acquisition to Desktop Metal back in 2021. So I joined them as their VP of Biomaterials and Innovation, leading this group, and also work with the 3D bioplotter system, which Desktop Metal had also acquired from Envision Tech around the same time. So some of you may be familiar with that printing system. So my role expanded more into helping other groups utilize that system for their applications, particularly on the med device space. Ended up creating a facility for bioprinting in Boston, which we called our incubator, INK-ubator for startups. And, found myself really enjoying and missing more of the startup scene. So back almost a year ago in March of 2024, I joined MedTech Innovator as a program director. So now I'm leading our annual cohort accelerator program. So we're not an investor in the traditional sense. We're a nonprofit. We don't take any equity in the companies that we support, but we do have a 5-month accelerator program with top-notch companies. And hopefully I can talk a bit about some of our 3D printing companies later that have been through this program, but really great program, non-dilutive grants that we provide to these companies from our award processes. We award up to $800,000 each year to these companies and really support them in a variety of other ways. So our application deadline is in less than a week, actually. So you all on the startup side are getting this info at just the right time to start that application, but hope to talk more about
maybe put a link. We should put a link, whatever
yes,
links that we
Thanks,
have,
Jenny.
we should
Good
put
idea.
it in. Yeah, so I would say one of the difference between this panel and the panel we had last year in 2024 or earlier, I don't remember, it's about a year ago, is we have people who are more focused on the very early stage of the startup founding journey. We have people who nobody wants to give you any money at that point. I'm connected with a couple of angel groups, and actually one of our advisors for one of the groups work with MedTech Innovators very closely, also advisor for MedTech Innovator. And it has a really good brand over the years because it has really supported a lot of very early stage startups when nobody wants to talk to you. Because if you're a founder, then I am pretty sure at this point, you would have gotten a couple of no's and maybe more than a dozen no's. And that is when you start to doubt yourself and feeling really terrible sometimes. So I just want to point that out. And also I love this panel because everyone here is an entrepreneur, had a lot of experience in and out of different ecosystems. So, 2024, I would say, was a hard year for everybody, especially if you're a founder in the biotech, medtech space. So I kind of want to hear, what do you think the current fundraising environment is? And where should people, who just started a company in the C stage should go to get their first check? I will start with Peter. So you're in Europe. So I would say you probably are more familiar with the European environment at the moment.
Yeah.
What is it like right now?
But situation is improving a bit, I think.
Okay.
Here in Europe, we were obviously hit on two fronts. First of all, money became more expensive over the last years. That's the same for everybody. Here in Europe, there was a second issue. I'm sure you all are aware of the European medical device legislation that changed over the last year. So there was a lot of, let's say, a lot of effort needed from all medical device companies to prepare for this transition to the MDR. And that also created a huge bottleneck with the notified bodies, which are our European regulators. And that's a double challenge for startups, of course. First of all, they can't get, it's more difficult to get the money over the last years, but at the same time, there were also regulatory hurdles. It was very difficult even to find a notified body that could accept you as a customer and that could review your technical files, etc. So both things are improving. I think in Europe, the interest rates are going down a bit faster than in the US. So that's
good. Yeah, it's good.
good for startups probably. But also the bottleneck on the regulatory side is more or less solved, or at least those notified bodies have capacity also to review new technical files from startups to look into new products, etc. So I see that yeah, there is more, let's say, more attention again for medical device startups from investors. The first check that you were referring to is always the most difficult one for a startup. I think it's probably easier to get it from an angel investor that is usually deciding based on gut feeling for this first check, and they look also at other things and at market potential and IP, etc. But especially for this first investment, it's usually based on gut feeling and also on a belief in a person rather than a belief in a market potential or a business plan. So that's probably still the best way, I think, for your first check.
Yeah.
It's my.
I remember a funny story. I invested in a company, insurance, something different from here, a couple years ago, and I invested because I believe in the founder's vision. And right after the pitch, when I said I'm committed, and I heard them say, "See how easy it is," and I'm just like, "Did I just make a mistake?"
Yeah.
The company's still running, so I think I'm okay. But that reminds me of that story. So yeah, angels are definitely the way to go. Okay, Jesse, what do you think? How's the environment?
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I think there's been some interesting, some hesitancy about the investment landscape for a medical device, and I think this year, I think there is also some optimism. Will there be a governmental change with the Department of Government Efficiency, and will that change the regulatory strategy?
Yeah.
Will that streamline things, or will it make it more challenging? I think that's unclear. But there's still, I think, continuing investment. I think the JP Morgan third quarter report showed there's still $1 billion year over year that's continuing to increase in investment there. So I think that, and another interesting trend that I just recently read was that there may be a focus from wearables and personal device. There's been a hesitancy to invest in more larger scale electronics and things like that. But that may be another area that's opening up is more big ticket items because there has been a sort of a hesitancy for some of the big ticket items. Now something like that may be another interesting trend.
What's considered big ticket item?
I'm thinking like larger devices, types of scanners.
I see.
Innovations in things like CT, MRI, larger types of bigger 3D printing type, larger scale items like that.
Larger capex.
Yeah,
capital heavy stuff. That. Okay.
Yeah, so those might be another interesting trend that I was seeing that is one potential. And then as far as initial funding, another I think potential is the SBIR, STTR programs, NSF programs that can take things even as early as an idea stage and can some initial money. So another potential source of funding as well.
Yeah, I have known a startup which actually is going to pitch later session. Brad, they raised almost 90% non-dilutive funding for the first stage of their company, a couple $1 million. It's the most successful grant writers I know. Yeah. Okay, let's see. Nicole, what do you think?
Yeah, thanks, Jenny. So I think it's improving a bit as, the interest rate scene is improving in general, and as others have noted in the industry. But I do think it's challenging for a lot of early stage companies right now at the pre-seed seed stage. I've seen a lot of clinical study and commercial stage companies having success fundraising through our program. For example, one of our cohort companies, Zetto, just closed a $31 million Series B round yesterday for their device. But yeah, I think a lot of these early stage companies are veering more toward, non-dilutive funding in the meantime to sort of bridge that gap. So I'm seeing a lot more companies trying for SBIR grants, other programs like ours that provide non-dilutive grants. So hoping it improves, but I think the others covered it well.
Is the government supply of these grants drying up, or is this like a limited pot of money every year people have to fight for? Like, do you have any do you guys have any insights on how people can get these non-dilutive funding more successfully?
Yeah, I've been seeing an increase in usage of outside grant writers through our companies because, time is money, especially in the MedTech
Right.
space, and CEOs can't be doing everything at once, especially when you're also trying to pitch and apply to other programs. You actually move your milestones forward. So I'll say that's one change I've seen. We'll see with the new administration how that changes the funding landscape. But
Yes.
at least the past few years, it seemed to remain pretty consistent. So, perhaps getting more competitive as people are applying, but I think people are utilizing professional grant writers more to increase their chances of getting.
Yeah, totally. And
I was going to say also just that
yeah.
there's programs like the NSF I-Core program that kind of is a first step to getting like an NSF grant as well, that are things that people could also look to help to get their foot in the door for government funding and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys, touched upon politics a little bit, and this is definitely not a platform for politics, but do you have any prediction on which direction we're actually going to go? Like, do you think the funding is going to stay the same? Is it or completely unknown at this point, which I think I am where I am. Like, it's just I'm not able to forecast anything at the moment.
If I had to guess, I would say the likelihood of funding going toward, companies, startups, likely won't be hurt as much as academic institutions and non-commercial research. That's my guess, just based on who's leading the administration.
I can see that. Yeah, I can see that. Okay, so now you guys work with companies very closely than many other investors I know. What are some of the things that you do? And I'll start with you, Nicole. How, MedTech Innovator help its startups?
Yeah, great point, Jenny. And maybe I'll just pull up a couple slides if that's good for people to.
Oh yeah, totally. Okay, by the way, I didn't plan this. Did not plan this. Okay, there you go.
I'll keep this brief, but
okay.
So yeah, first, kind of wanted to highlight, a little bit some of the companies that have been through our cohort and types of technologies we promote. Yep. So if you're in the 3D printing space, like definitely relevant for you, implantable devices, as well as if you're doing more like organ-on-chip systems, I encourage you to also look at our BioTools Innovator Program. So that's for more B2B life science companies. So if your end goal is a pharma customer, for example, that program is going to be relevant for you. But anyone doing tissue grafts, this is for them. Just wanted to show like 3 example companies that have been through our cohort that are in the 3D printing space. So Nanocon is actually, I think pretty involved in the 3D Heals community as well. Actually, Lattice.
I invest in them. Yeah, I'm an investor for this.
And Lattice has been our mid-stage grand prize winner this year also. Sorry. And they're doing breast reconstruction as well as Reconstruct Bio. So they're more like a biologic 3D printed adipose tissue solution. These are some resources that we provide. So first off is an educational curriculum. So we custom make a webinar series for our cohort each year in their interests. So often this is topics like fundraising, M&A, regulatory strategies, term sheets, ins and outs of that, as well as custom mentorship. So I would say this is one of the strongest assets of our program is we have about a dozen corporate partners like Zimmer, Johnson & Johnson, Dexcom. So, whatever your clinical fit is where we're going to place a partner with you. Also recognition opportunities. So in conferences and other forums, we have showcase opportunities for our companies. A lot of other conferences will actually charge startups to come up on the stage and pitch. But if you make it into MedTech Innovator, not only is the program free, but you'll get several opportunities to present for free as a current cohort company, and then later as an alum as well. And we have a very active social media presence. If you're not already following MedTech Innovator on LinkedIn, go do that right now. We have a lot of resources that are free to other startups, not even in our community. This one I would say is the biggest one that folks get out of it is this peer network. I'm based in the Boston area. We have tons of therapeutics and biotech companies. Can be harder to find folks in the med device space specifically. And so having folks going through similar challenges with you, especially when it comes to, the manufacturing side of things, different regulatory pathways that aren't quite as clear sometimes for med devices, different clinical pathways, is great to learn from others. And, our community has a very active Slack channel. People ask advice advice all the time. Like even just today, someone was asking for, media outlets to share their press release. A lot of crosstalk happening within companies in our cohort. Other resources we have like PitchBook Access. We have a great program of graduate student fellows that help out the companies. So you can think of that sort of as an intern that we pay instead of you to help you out with this specific project. And then finally is the funding, which I talked about. So each year we award over $800,000 in non-dilutive prize funding. We have a very active investor network of more than 900 investors that come to our events and we make intros to, as well as a new open rounds feature we're launching in our portal for investors to find out exactly how much money each of our companies is raising, what they're looking for, and more details about their approach. And then, just wanted to also share some of our partners that you could work with. And so in addition to this, we have 3 awesome tracks. And in particular, I see a lot of our 3D printing companies in our plastic surgery track. So hosted by the American Society of Plastic Surgeons. So both Lattice and Reconstruct were part of that track, as well as we have a military medicine track, which can be helpful for regenerative products to make it in. We have a value program, which comprises a workshop as well as customized coaching, which almost all of our companies opt into. In the 3D printing space, you get the question a lot, why 3D print this? And so really nailing down those reasons and the benefits of your product for each of your stakeholders is paramount to your long-term success. And so these reimbursement and coding experts will really help you drive home, not just how you get to market, but how you increase your market adoption through this. And so, definitely check this out. This is just quickly our timeline. We do have some in-person roadshow events. Only requirement is really that, you have the time to commit to the program. We recommend around 4 to 6 hours a week of one person, and then travel costs to some of our events, but you'll get complimentary admission to the conferences once you are there. This is basically the timeline in. So we invite 200 companies to pitch for our program and then end up splitting our cohort into early and mid stage. So, Lattice, for example, they had already raised around 20 million by the time they joined our program. So they were in our mid stage cohort. They're in clinical trials and going down a PMA pathway. We've had other commercial stage companies in mid stage as well. So really for all stages of companies, just some quotes, but hopefully that helps some of you guys that were.
Oh yeah. It helped me even crystallize my I only know part of what you guys do usually are the events and stuff and the pitch competitions, but all the work that you have done in the back, that is amazing. That's so much work. Jesse, how do you help the startups that you help?
Yeah, definitely. From my standpoint, really providing just some of the connecting them to a lot of the network of folks that I have from the either investor side of things to FDA regulatory, and just really providing some of the insights that we've had from our experiences and going through the FDA 510K process, and all the folks that we met along the way that were helpful in getting us to that standpoint. So. I think one of the nice things about being in this Bay Area ecosystem and being here is that so many folks that you can connect with and get to know through various events, through the accelerators that we've been through. And so a lot of it is also being a connector and to the various pieces. So I think that's been one of the more important things that I've been really enjoying focusing on.
Yeah, you don't have to go to events, just go to a coffee shop.
Yeah, right.
You'll find a couple of VCs there. Peter, what do you think? How do you what are the things you do for the startups to help them?
But it depends a lot on the profile of the startup, I think, and especially of the profile of the founders, because I think there's something like the founder's bias that I read about also. So an engineer is typically very good at designing something, something of manufacturing, but doesn't have a lot of experience in fundraising, in regulatory, in reimbursement, etc. And it depends a bit on who you're dealing with. But I think honestly, a lot of what I'm trying to do for these startups is simply avoiding mistakes, mistakes that are expensive usually, time consuming, and like Jesse mentioned, also connecting them to the right complementary people or organizations, identifying the weaknesses in the team and making sure you can complement that with freelancers or with external advisors or organizations. I think that's an important thing. And yeah, and typically on the European side, I think we are a bit more conservative usually in fundraising, and that has positive and negative side effects. I think typically I try to advise the startups not to raise too much money from the beginning, because I see a lot of startups doing stupid things if they have too much money. That's one reason, but also I think it's good habit to raise money based on achievement of certain milestones, and then you shouldn't raise too little, obviously, because then your runway is too short, and you may be forced one day to raise money when you're out of money, which is the worst situation to raise money, of course. But I've seen a lot of people doing stupid things also if they have too much money. So I try to advise them a bit also there and plan the fundraising accordingly to their milestones.
And what are some of the big mistakes that you avoided? Like, what are some of the warning?
Well, I think some things that I saw startups do, not exclusively in the 3D printing domain.
Yeah,
but
of course. Yeah,
definitely also in
open
the
to
3D printing
everyone,
domain.
humans.
It's
Human founders.
To spend so much money on marketing already, even in a situation where you have nothing to sell.
Right.
It's good to create awareness, I think, and also in view of future fundraising. But if you don't really have something to sell yet, then it's better to spend your money on developing your product or your technology until you are ready to sell something.
Yeah.
That's one thing. I think also, let's say, for some startups, they try to do everything at the same time. They focus on Europe, on the US, they go for a CE mark, 510K or PMA at the same time. Sometimes that's also not the best approach, probably. So, yeah.
So a lot of capital allocation mistakes that you saw.
Well,
basically,
it's all related because
right.
all these mistakes have a financial impact. So that's indeed related to capital allocation.
Yeah, absolutely. Jesse and Nicole, do you guys have anything to add about mistakes that you want to avoid, help the startups to avoid?
Not thinking about your target markets early enough, especially in the 3D printing space. A lot of people are like, it's a platform, we can do this for a lot of different indications, but especially when raising money, you're going to want to be as clear as possible what that beachhead market is, what your first product's going to be, what the pathway is. And so, yeah, that's why I mentioned we have, this value program, for example. It's never too early to figure out, exactly, what coding you're going to go down. Do you need to file a new technology code, or is there an existing CPT code? Figure that out sooner than later, and it'll be assuring to investors. And indeed, most of our investors use the materials they generate in their value program in their data room that they send to investors.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
And totally agree with that. Just figuring out who is going to be your first customer, and not spending so much time iterating on the product and getting it fine-tuned, but getting it in the hands of the people that are going to be using it. So then you can use that feedback to make it directing toward what they actually want, and building a product that people want to have and use, and getting some of those early signals of traction, I think, is really important. From our standpoint, also budgeting out, just to Nicole's point of knowing your regulatory pathway, what it's going to be, and that it's probably factoring in your use of funds, that it's going to be more expensive than you initially think it's going to be. Because even in our journey, like FDA in the middle of it added on another requirement right while we were doing our application. And so having to get that extra round of testing and things like that we didn't expect. So making sure that you have consultants that have been in that space and have done it in a similar pathway, I think, is important.
Absolutely. Okay, so we have a couple of audience questions, but some of them I like to just generalize a little bit, because one person, Philmon, is asking, how does the CHIP Act help? As I guess MedTech Innovator is a nonprofit. I mean, I think the generalization of this question is, what are some of the major policy changes the last couple of years impact you as an investor? I mean, I know Nicole and Jesse, you're in the US, so you're impacted probably by the chip. I'm not sure if I am. But I'm not, I think that what I heard from the 3D printing community is that there is money allocated from the CHIP Act, but I'm not really seeing that money to the startups, to be honest with you. So what do you guys think? Are any of these major policy changes or budget from the government actually helped the early stage startup space?
It's a good question. I would say I haven't seen as much impact in the early
Nothing.
stage
Yeah,
startup
it
space.
felt like, where did it go?
Yeah, my husband is in manufacturing, and so for him,
Yeah.
definitely more relevant for the products he works on.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would assume it's only helping, you know, the broader industry in terms of like the suppliers of the OEM printers right now in their manufacturing process. But as for the startups, I don't know if that's really trickled down, so to say, quite.
Yeah, I think angel investors, the people you're gonna look for. Jesse, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean,
Policies.
really, for something like those would be, automotive, defense, other types of technology that, use the types of semiconductors and those type of chips, I think that would be one area where it would be largely impacted. And then
Right.
similarly, it would be, the trickle down for those, I think it's probably still yet to be seen, I think.
It takes time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Peter, any major European policy changes that's impacting the early stage in your space right now?
But here in Europe, we see a lot of attention and also funding available for personalized therapies in general. So let's say personalized cell and gene therapies, but also personalized medical devices. There are some dedicated funds available from the European Union for these kind of projects and startups.
Mm-hmm.
So that's definitely a trend. And yeah, besides that, in general, like in most countries, there's pressure on healthcare budgets. So any kind of
Yes.
innovation that can save money for the healthcare budgetary system usually can get funding easier than a nice new product that makes healthcare even more expensive. So that's an important factor, I think, in the success rate of applying for funding in Europe.
So does that mean the software companies are going to have an easier time than hardware?
Not necessarily. I think there are also hardware products that can demonstrate favorable economics versus the standard of care. So it all comes down to demonstrating that potential for cost saving, I think.
Okay, cool. So since we're on that subject, what do you guys think of 2025 is going to bring to the community? Okay, it's a very open-ended question. You can talk about what you're hoping it's going to bring and what you're afraid of, or both. Music time. Yeah, we did not prepare the investors ahead of the time, so this is all authentic, real-time answers. Yeah.
I mean, I think we're all hoping that, interest rates continue to go down, so there's more investment,
more money to go around
in the community.
Yes.
Maybe not ever we'll get 2020, 2021 levels, but, closer to average and what it's been. I think broadly hoping to see the community embracing MedTech more, the investment community. As I said, in Boston, so many of our investors here are, therapeutics or bust and won't really consider market sizes, smaller than, your average therapeutic. So understanding that these shorter timelines can pay back sooner for a lot of MedTech versus, pharma timelines, and realizing the value of that as some of their funds don't see returns as shorter as they would hope for their pharma investments, therapeutics investments. So that's what I'm hoping to see. you know, we're always afraid of unknowns that could get thrown in the mix alongside of all of this. But I
Yes.
think, yeah, more folks getting involved in the community from diverse backgrounds increasing is always what I love to see as well. And I've seen it definitely a trend toward in recent years, folks that aren't from the MedTech sphere, you know, wanting to break into it because they're realizing the impact that all these really cool innovations are making on patients and their lives. Yeah.
Absolutely. Jesse, what do you think?
Oh, yeah, no, I think, yeah, and similarly, I think I am hopeful for, potential streamlining of some of the processes of FDA and
The Doge.
yeah, the Doge, yeah, exactly. So, I do hope
I
that
do
that
hope so.
will,
I hope they deliver, and it's
yeah,
just
right.
not talk like Twitter talks.
Exactly. So, I mean, from having gone through the process, I do think that there are areas where it could be more efficient. And so if that
Yeah,
can
absolutely.
happen, that can definitely help as far as just getting products to market and people in hands of still safely, but at the same time that will allow more innovation to happen and will be potentially less reticence on the part of funders to be able to then, fuel these innovations and those products. Definitely see increasing use of artificial intelligence really across the board for applying many of the different types of both software and application of hardware and robotics. That's one of the areas where I think is very exciting. And then, some worrisome, making sure that we don't hit sort of an over enthusiasm about applications of AI where they're just throwing it in just to have it on the name and to be able to say that it's using AI or it's powered by AI, but really it's sort of not really an essential function. So, a meaningful use of those type of things, I think is going to be aware of for that.
We've had that in the radiology space
Yeah,
a decade ago.
Yeah,
let's hope this time it actually works.
That's right. That's very true.
Peter?
Yeah, I think if your Doge department is ready in the US, maybe you can send them over to Europe. So I think that would be a good thing for Europe. Yeah, overall, I think regulation in Europe became so strict, so bureaucratic that there's, yeah, I would hope that also the European Commission realizes this one day and they may come back to certain decisions. I think regulation is good and necessary, but it needs to, let's say, it needs to lead to, let's say, better patient safety. It doesn't have to lead to higher bureaucratic burden
Oh, absolutely.
for
Totally.
everybody involved. So I think there's some work to do there in Europe. And yeah, for the rest, I'm also hopeful that let's say the financing climate will further improve as interest rates go down. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I read a couple books, and all of them are talking about government tend to grow bigger and bigger, and it's really almost impossible to reduce back. That doesn't go back until you have war and a change of government, change of leadership completely. And I don't really want to see that happening. So yeah, I'm hoping we can have some innovative solution to this just compounding bureaucracies over generations. So it will be kind of a semi-miracle, I would say, if we can really reduce it. And honestly, I don't understand that the MDR procedure, like that change for the labeling of medical devices and that regulatory change that you mentioned, Peter. I've heard everybody, that's like the biggest pain point of all the startups that we work with and and a lot of founders and CEOs, just like that's the biggest headache. And I guess some people kind of just accepted it, but nobody love it.
No, well, the notified bodies that are private organizations in Europe, they will love it because it's additional business for them.
Yeah, I don't know anyone there.
No, but the medical device companies, they don't like it. I think some of the regulations or the changes in regulations are good, but a lot of it is additional bureaucratic work that doesn't improve patient safety, and that is frustrating. To the extent that I see also European startups omitting or just neglecting the European market.
Yes,
there are some European startups that just focus on their 510K or PMA and that neglect Europe. for the time being, and they
Yes.
focus on the US first. 10 years ago, when I was talking to clients, it was the opposite. They started
Right.
in Europe. After that, they went to the US, and that trend is changing. So
Yes,
that's
absolutely.
definitely an important effect of the additional bureaucracy, combined with, of course, the bigger market in the US, one regulatory system, one or let's say a less complicated reimbursement system compared to Europe. So that's definitely the case.
Absolutely. Okay, so we actually talked a lot about regulatory stuff. Let me just make sure we touched all the points I want to talk about. Let's take a look at the audience questions. Okay, yeah, some people are mentioning the regulatory and political environment. Hopefully, will be more friendly. So, since you guys invest in both 3D printing related startups and also 3D print, not, and probably more non-3D printing, do you feel, because last year I've seen a lot of, maybe it's because the people that I'm connected to on social media, but I've seen a lot of negative sentiment around 3D printing, not just healthcare stuff, but as you know, like a couple of bigger companies are merging, and then all these talks of just going away, no longer listed on the public market, a SPAC went wrong. Does this actually hurt the startup space, the 3D printing startups?
It's a good question. I think definitely there used to be, let's say a very positive connotation to 3D printing years ago.
Right.
And if you start as a startup with a 3D printing product or technology, today it has more like a negative connotation sometimes. And people say, okay, yeah, 3D printing companies always overpromise and underdeliver. I think that's a kind of a general thought with some people. Well, we have seen illustrations of overpromise and underdeliver in the 3D printing industry, I think, but that's not related to the medical device startups using 3D printing technology. I think I have always seen 3D printing technology as just a manufacturing technology, but a very interesting manufacturing technology with very interesting possibilities for customization, but also for reduction of inventory and all the benefits that come with 3D printing. But it has been overhyped, and we at a certain moment some people were saying, okay, in the future every hospital will be 3D printing all the implants inside of the hospital. Surgeons will make the designs, etc. I think that was also kind of a hype, and we see at least in Europe that hospitals have come back from that idea. They still use it extensively for models, for surgical guides and these applications, but the actual 3D printing of implants, there are not that many successful examples of that, of hospitals doing that in-house. And they underestimated not only the economics, but also the regulatory hurdles, the process validations, etc., everything that comes with it. So I think that's also one of the reasons why, the
it's like the
3D printing connotation has become a bit less positive today.
Absolutely. Nico, what do you think, since you invest in general?
I would say, the biggest, risk for a startup is having their manufacturing process be designed such that it only works on one particular system. With a lot of this consolidation in the industry, I think we might see some product lines, disappear off the map just because of priorities in different areas of the businesses. So just my recommendation for startups is, obviously pick the best system for your product, but ensure that it's possible to, if you have to transfer your manufacturing process to a different piece of equipment, that you are able to do so. But also, I like to find the silver linings in things. So, with a lot of these larger companies, being, excited for new sales, I'll say it that way, in any way possible. You can definitely work discounts more, floor models, things like that to get a better value on the systems that you do get for your startup. So really mention the long-term potential of your company, like, hey, we're buying one printer now, but if this product's successful, we're going to have a manufacturing facility with 10 of these to meet the global demand. And so, I think phrasing things like that way when you're purchasing a system can go further in this day and age than perhaps it could a few years ago.
I think Julian from Lattice Medical, they're kind of like had that pitch. I think he said he can scale up quickly. I think
Yeah, they're using FDM. So luckily there's
like
dozens
extrusion.
and dozens of systems out there for extrusion. There's maybe 5 or 6 main players right now in the market. And a lot of them have similar capabilities, but just do your research on what the capabilities are. And so if, for example, you're printing a material that is at, 450 degrees Celsius, it needs to be extruded at, and there's only one system that has a print head that goes up to 500 degrees Celsius, like you're not kind of, tied in for that reason, because you're never sure about like longer term support and things like that. But always hoping for the best.
I think in general, it's also important for startups that wanted to 3D print a medical device to realize that it's not necessary today to invest in 3D printing hardware to do that. It was necessary like 10 years ago, maybe, but today there are a number of very good contract manufacturing companies that have ISO certification or FDA registered that can do that for you. And that's actually the reason why I started with MNovis. Ruben probably explained you, but we are definitely not the only one. There are a lot of companies that can support you in doing that for you. And sometimes it depends a bit on how interconnected your application is with the material or the production technology. But I think in 90% of the cases, you're probably better off outsourcing your manufacturing, at least in your first years of operation, to an external contract manufacturing. It will be huge saving in capex, but also in regulatory validation costs, etc.
Does your manufacturing business help people doing the analysis of economics? Whether or not they should just
Yeah, absolutely. So in MNovis, for example, we do a lot of contract manufacturing for spinal companies, orthopedic companies, CMF companies. And we are agnostic in terms of technology. So like Nicole mentioned, sometimes it's very much focused to a certain machine or technology. We operate different brands in MNovis to do that. But we also support companies not just with the manufacturing, but also with the design for manufacturing. We optimize their designs for AM, which is also a significant learning curve.
Yes, very hard.
If you have to do it from scratch. And we are also pragmatic in the sense that we realize that medical device companies, for several reasons, whether it's strategic or economic, one day may want to insource manufacturing, and we even support that. So it makes no sense for us to lock customers in. We even enable that so they can start working with a contract manufacturer for several years. And usually we see that some companies, medical device companies that become larger, some want to insource manufacturing.
Yeah.
Then we support that. But at the same time, we see that we still keep doing manufacturing work for them for their overflow production, for their new products or whatever. So that's always a combination of both.
Yeah. Okay, so we have one question from the audience. I think this is a good segue to talk about how do you find the next startup for you as an investor to invest in? And if you have way too many incoming leads, how do you process all these companies? I mean, I think Nicole probably has more problem than the rest of us, because I have like 24 startups every year. Nicole has like thousands, right? Did you show a slide that has like 1,400 as a starting funnel?
Yes. We usually get more than 1,000 apply every year.
How do you
This year
filter
we've
it down?
got like 1,300 already in the works or submitted.
That's crazy.
So always busy. We have a multi-tiered process that we go through for this. First of all is just our internal review, making sure that the company aligns with the mission of MedTech Innovator. They're eligible for it. Things like, they're already incorporated. They're not like a public company or something like that. And then we will basically make sure that they're creating, a medical technology. They're not, for example, we'll get like a lot of more like biologics and therapeutics companies apply, which don't fit our mission. And we can redirect some more platform companies to the BTI. Sometimes they'll switch their application into that pool if relevant. From there is our application review kind of stage of it. That's from mid-January usually until like mid-February or so. So we have—
That's really short. Just a month?
It's crazy. We have more than 200 reviewers because it's a very tight
Oh my God.
every year. And our pitch events that we invite folks to start as early as, the beginning, middle of March. So we give people some notice to come out to those pitch events. We'll assign, each application reviewer, around 5 applications to review a week, and with the goal of each application getting reviewed by at least 3, often 4 folks. And then from there, we'll make our selections for the pitch events. A lot of our reviewers are also from our partner organizations, so their strategic interests often play a role in those that we invite to pitch events, specifically pitch events that they're going to. So if you're a startup out there applying to MTI, definitely look at our partners, the folks like J&J Zimmer, and mention in your application specifically if you would like to be mentored by one of them, because that would help us in delegating your application to their review, and could potentially, help them realize that you would get value out of it and select you. From those 200 that pitch in person, and we have 3 pitch events, and we like to do these in person. First of all, for the startups, it's a benefit for you to meet the judges that are all folks from, either partners, venture capital, a lot of, hospital folks. So people that have served on like value analysis committees, things like that. That stage is, very important for us to figure out how coachable the company is as well. So for us to find out, is this not just a cool technology, but are the founders good people that we want in our program? We had a question in the chat about how our program differs from like, the SBIR grant process. And the answer is that we're not just a grant, we're a program. We're with you for 5 months. We don't just, give you a check and we're done. We work with these companies intensively, and I know and get to know these companies. All of us do very, very well over this 5-month period. So we want to make sure you're good people, and you're coachable and you're receptive to feedback. So from those 200 that we meet in person, we'll then invite the 65 into our cohort. So that's kind of where that 5% admit rate ends up coming from and down to. But I would say if you're a physical device, I would say odds can tend to be slightly better than some of the digital health, just because that's where our partners' interests tend to lie a little bit more. Not to discourage any digital health companies, definitely, and we've had many of our successes, particularly a lot of our companies that have had exits and acquisitions tend to be on the digital health side, but physical products tend to be a little more in line with our partners. So definitely don't get discouraged by those percentages, and definitely still apply. Our grand prize winner this year, $350K, she won. This was her 3rd year applying. She was rejected her first 2 years. 3rd year applying, she got in and won the big grand prize. So
good for her.
Keep reapplying. But
that's great. Okay, so I mean, I have a program, and here's a little plug for us, because in a couple hours you will hear a cohort of companies pitching through our Pitch3D program. I started this 2018, and we've hosted more than, I think by now, 80 startups at least. They're seed, early stage startups, and typically it's through our various media events, through webinars, just online presence, and we help startups for free. There's no cost to go through us. We're connected to about 30 institutional investors and angel groups, and I hope to expand that group in the future. And one thing I kind of want to echo Nicole is I realized that they have in-person events, and we started this more virtually than in person. And I invested in a couple of startups founders that I've never met in person. Now, thinking back, I actually think in the future, I personally, as an investor, I would love to meet the people that I'm investing in person, because you can see so much without even talking in a person. And that's being scientifically proven. So that's Pitch3D, and anyone who's in the 3D technology space, including 3D printing, AR, VR, and any kind of CAD software. And yeah, as long as it fit the 3D technology criteria, we're open to them, and bioprinting, obviously. So Peter and Jesse, we have a couple, okay, I guess we're on time, but I don't want to miss out on you guys. Is you certainly don't have the volume that Nicole has, which is in the thousands. How do you decide, and you have, I'm assuming people are gonna contact you, or you want to, do you have any kind of outreach and filtering process for people who are connected with you who needs funding? Like, how do you, I think, Peter, you mentioned at the beginning of this webinar that you have, you're looking for certain things to work with the founders, but I'm sure more people are a lot more people are reaching out to you for money.
Yeah, that's true. And I don't have a process to look for companies. I never looked for one, because usually they contact me directly, but I just try to stay within my, let's say, my circle of competence,
Right.
which is not all medical devices. I don't think I would very quickly invest in a new MRI technology or something like Jesse would maybe do, because that's not my circle of competence. So for me, that is everything that is patient-specific: implants, orthopedic, spine, maxillofacial, these kind of things. But yeah, obviously sometimes you have to disappoint people, but I always try to connect them then to other people, or even institutional investors, of which I know that they could be interested in this kind of startup. So yeah, but I don't have a formal process or a gated process or something to select these companies. No.
It makes sense. Jesse, do you have any process set up?
Yeah, I mean, well, certainly I really use LinkedIn a lot to just see what are the new things, the innovative areas that are happening. And then, is there something that one is, just as Peter was mentioning, is it sort of in an area where it's where I could add value from my expertise and knowledge? Is it an area that I feel like is solving a relevant clinical problem, just from that standpoint? So yeah, those are like, what is the problem they're solving? Is it something that I think is actually going to be useful, and is somewhere where I could add some of my expertise and value in to help them from that side?
Absolutely. Yeah, I started to feel like our 30 plus institutional investors, angel groups aren't enough, because everyone is so different. They have different set of expertise and what they're looking for. We need more diversification in terms of investors too. So thank you everyone for this incredible panel. I think everyone learned a lot, and this will be published online soon. I would love to hear your feedback about this session. And